that the user is really the weakest link, and that, not everyone can be a cybersecurity expert, and we don't want them to be. We want them to, do their job at marketing or at sales.
So we have a really special podcast today. We've been looking forward to this one. We get to speak to Mikey Pruitt from DNS Filter. Mikey, welcome to Let's Make IT Simple. Great to have you with us.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thanks.
Do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself? Kind of let us know who you are, where you're from, what you do.
Sure. My name's Mikey Pruitt. I'm a product manager at DNS Filter. I've been serving in a lot of roles here at DNS Filter. I started in DevOps and support, kind of like the tier 2 support back when we were a much smaller company, more in the startup phase. And now we're over getting close to like 150 employees. So grown tremendously since then, and just know a lot about our particular technology, the DNS. I love when people say the DNS, but know a lot about all that, and just excited to talk with you guys today.
What exactly is, or who exactly is DNS Filter?
Each month I give a new hire demo. We're hiring a lot of people, and I boil down what is DNS Filter to our name. It's a very simple name on purpose. There's DNS and then there's filter. So DNS is a very complex thing to understand. It's not important that you understand it, just that it's the domain names you're typing into your browser. It's the domain names that applications are calling to get resources. It's the domain names that your printer is sending to talking with the machine back and forth. And then filtering is us in between that conversation, blocking out the bad stuff.
Today, what we're going to talk about is a term that you yourself coined. So, so we get to get it straight from the source. Decentralized Cyber Security. So can you tell us a little bit about that, what that is, what it means, and how you came to coin that term?
Sure. So the term can be misleading. So a lot of people conflate it with decentralizing the management of cybersecurity, which is not what we're promoting. The simple idea is that the endpoints that are becoming the thing to secure is now disparate. They are now decentralized. So we need to treat those endpoints exactly as we would the traditional perimeter, like the network of your office or an actual physical location. Like the world is a lot different than it was 5 or 10 years ago, or even 3 years ago. The world is a lot different. Our internet connected devices are, roaming around the earth, and that needs to be taken seriously. And it takes a different approach than the traditional cybersecurity approach.
So the world has changed significantly, partially because, most in part because of the pandemic forcing everybody home. And we've all thought about working from home for a long time. We finally were just made to do it. It turned out to be something that a lot of us like doing. In fact, I still work mostly from home as a result. But you've got this white paper you put out on decentralized cybersecurity. And one of the cool points it makes is about the fact that since we've changed this environment where we used to be behind the corporate firewall to now a distributed environment, there's a whole slew of new challenges. How does DNS Filter as a product tackle that challenge? What makes it able to accomplish that?
Well, I think DNS Filter was in a great position when the pandemic started. I mean, so, it kind of feels bad to say that, but, we're a fully remote company. We started off fully remote, so we kind of understand that ecosystem. And the tool itself was just remote by nature. And the technology is something that travels with you wherever you're at, no matter what device you're on, no matter what network you're on. If you're in an airport, a coffee shop, or a hotel, or your friend's house, or whatever, that security layer at the DNS level is there with you all the time.
That's because it's agent-based, right? That's actually installed on each computer.
Yeah, exactly. So we have a small piece of software, a roaming client, that you can install on any platform, basically, all the way from Windows to Chromebooks, and everything in between, even Linux, kind of. So everybody
sort of works on Linux.
Yeah, it works on Linux, but there's a little bit extra you have to do on Linux. But the DNS layer we found is it's often overlooked in the security stack. It's becoming a lot more prominent for the DNS layer to get some attention. But we've really seen that about, I think it's 70% or so of threats actually come or involve the DNS layer. So if you can get some perimeter around the endpoint at the DNS layer, you're blocking a tremendous amount of potential threats coming through.
Yeah. What's an example of an attack that would come in through DNS?
Well, there's a lot of like phishing websites. We're actually really good at identifying phishing websites, and this is kind of the very common trope where someone gets a phishing email, looks like their bank, and they'll click on it and then accidentally leak some credentials for whatever account that was. That's something that we'll recognize and block that right before any code is executed on the machine. We'll just block it outright. But there's a lot of other more intricate DNS attacks, things like DNS spoofing, DNS tunneling, and those are solved in different ways, but all of them kind of harken back to our core technology, which is categorizing websites and especially categorizing those threat sites. So we can categorize botnet sites, malware, crypto mining sites, and phishing domains, obviously, plus content.
So a lot of these attacks that come in on email where somebody clicks on a link and it takes them to a malicious site or a site at least that wants them to put in confidential information, DNS Filter is able to stop that. I know DNS Filter is also able, you can add content categories and start blocking gambling sites, adult sites, terrorist sites, and things like that as well. And that's we know from our customers that they don't want to have HR problems because their employees are going to these sites. So that feature, because it's agent based, also would follow those devices off the corporate network, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things we've seen is that we're really good at blocking threats, but and almost everybody turns on those threat categories. But then when you get into the content area, you have to decide as a company or as this department, like what is the unwanted content for this particular set of users? And we make that really simple at DNS Filter.
We did a recent podcast talking about a hybrid work environment and how that's, and not only is it remote, but sometimes there's this hybrid work environment where people are coming into the office and then they're working from home as well. So some of the things that you've been speaking about, and this is an acronym that was in your in the white paper, BYOD. I know that's something that bring your own device. That's something that Travis and I have spoken about because there's certain complications with that if somebody's using their own device and then they're using a device at work. So how does DNS Filter and this decentralized cybersecurity relate to things like bring your own device?
Yeah, I think BYOD is like really scary for IT managers, IT admins. It's something you can't control, but you could, with permission, obviously, of that particular user, install our agent on that device. If that doesn't work out or it's not in the policies that's going to happen, there are also more blanket deployments that we offer. So if anyone is on a network that you control, you can deploy DNS Filter at the network level. And that's kind of what we see typically is that the network will be protected. Any networks that are involved in the technology of that particular org will have kind of a blanket policy. Nothing terrible is going to happen on this network.
We have found one solution for that for our customers and even for our own employees is to say, hey, if you want to access corporate assets with your own device, here's the policy for doing that. That policy in our case requires that they allow us to enroll the device in an MDM. And then we can apply a limited set of tools, including DNS Filter, and we use Huntress for our EDR MDR solution, and Webroot is our antivirus. So it allows us to put those on the device first, and then we can say, hey, now that we've done that, now we're going to allow that device to have access to these, corporate assets because we know that it's safer. Right. And so I'd say from my experience, a big thing for business owners is to consider if people are going to use their own device, do you have some sort of policy put together, some sort of standard to say, hey, this is how we want you to interact with that data so that it's still secure, and not just leave it completely open-ended.
Yeah, absolutely. And like us as employees that are bringing our own devices into the workplace, whether no matter where it is, if it's at home or at a coffee shop or in an office, but if it is our device, like there are compromises to be made where we need to adhere to that policy in order to protect the corporate assets, and that's
Right.
a serious thing that everyone needs to get on board with in order for this work from home world to continue and everyone to be comfortable with.
Yeah, I think the problem that your average person has is they don't understand just how real the threats are, right? We see, because we manage hundreds of customers in Colorado and in Las Vegas and throughout the United States and the South, there are a lot of different types of attacks that actually are brought against these customers. And some of them are very successful. In fact, the most successful ones are the ones that are attacking the user, right? They're
Yeah.
not really the technical attacks. So the ones that are trying to get a human being to be helpful. That's usually the style of attack. Now, the NIST framework has, I think it's 5 or 6 different areas that you're trying to codify and have a plan for in your environment to make sure that you can actually repel these attacks. And I know that DNS Filter actually plays a role in a couple different areas there. One of the things I appreciate about it is if that email does get through that hardened perimeter and then somebody clicks on the link, that's when you guys spring into action, right? That's one of the areas. But can you talk to the NIST framework for a second and just sort of how your product plays into that?
Yeah, sure. So for your audience, I actually have them in front of me. The NIST framework includes recover, identify, protect, detect, and respond. And I think in our white paper, we kind of boiled that down to 3 more concentric areas, where it was perimeter defense, detection and response, and then the user. And I think the user kind of gets left out of the NIST framework a little bit, although it's touched on. It's not really pointed out specifically, but you just mentioned it, that the user is really the weakest link, and that not everyone can be a cybersecurity expert, and we don't want them to be. We want them to do their job at marketing or at sales or at whatever it happens to be, and provide those layers of security around them. And DNS Filter plays at the protect and detect area around that perimeter. So we are really like a shield around all the endpoints that will block the malware coming through. And you, like I said earlier, you would be surprised at how many things you can block with just DNS filtering. So it's really powerful layer to get some protection on.
For some of our listeners who maybe they don't know all the technical terms, and they're listening, and just there was a beautiful illustration that was made in this white paper as well. You talked about the perimeter as a moat, and then you talked about each user having their own defense as well. Could you kind of rehash that illustration for us?
Yeah, exactly. We have a marvelous graphic designer here at DNS Filter, several. One of them is named Ricardo Morel. He's the one who designed this white paper, and he did a great job. And I was trying to describe to him this image that you're talking about, and describing to him, he's a designer. He is not a cybersecurity expert, but he's become one accidentally. But so I'm describing how the network used to be like the perimeter. Like if you're in this protected bubble, you're safe. But now that protected bubble needs to go with you around your laptop, around your cell phone, around you, and wherever you're at, and all of your internet connected devices. And he came up with that illustration about basically the moat around each endpoint kind of traveling around.
So if a business owner doesn't have laptops, doesn't have mobile devices, only has their corporate network, and people are still working from that office, is there still a value to this product in their environment?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would include in your group devices that cannot have a roaming client installed on them. Things like printers or manufacturing equipment. Like they're still connected to the internet. They receive commands from somewhere to print this thing or cut this thing or whatever. So those can all be protected at the network level, and they have to be protected at the network level. And with DNS Filter, you can give them a policy that's specific to them. Like your lumber mill only needs to connect to these 6 domain names. So what you could do is block every domain name except for those 6 and give a policy just to that set of machines. So now that machine is not going to be infiltrated or accidentally go to a website that it's not supposed to. I mean, and if it does, then we'll report on it. You'll be aware of it, and then you'll know that there's something wrong with that machine.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's funny you say that about the different policies. That came up with one of our customers. Their concern was they actually have some help desk folks that, and this is for an internet service provider that we manage here in town. Their help desk people actually need to be able to access basically the entire internet, right? They can't have much of a policy in place. And so they were concerned that, oh, well, if you put this filter in, now they're not going to be able to do their troubleshooting, their support. But we were able to show them, no, look, we can have multiple policies, right? We can have this group can have access to far more, but then we can take, you know, your billing and accounting department and people that you're really concerned about and your C levels, and we can apply a separate policy over there, which that flexibility in that case was, I mean, it was paramount to, you know, them allowing us to actually roll out the product in their environment. You know, I just wanted to point out that this white paper is worth checking out, right? I found it very informative and useful. And, you know, I deal in this information all day, but I think everybody should check it out. One of the really cool parts of it is there's a preparedness checklist at the end that you can walk through and compare your environment against. And I think that's just a really, really good idea. And I know that, you know, DNS Filter doesn't check all the boxes here, but it checks a number of those boxes. And I know that these are also similar to the questions that cyber liability insurance providers are requiring. And we know that they're requiring more and more out of their customers every year because breaches are getting out of control. And so I just wanted to point out that this is really an awesome checklist that people should go. You should go check out this white paper, and you should walk through this list. And if you can't do it yourself as a business owner, grab your IT person, right, and have them sit down with you and walk through this list. I just think this was really well prepared, Mike.
Yeah, and we don't want to take full credit for it. This is the Center for Internet Security CIS. They put out this list and have a wealth of knowledge about describing every piece of it. There's different levels, and there's, you know, depending on the industry that you're in, different levels that they recommend. So you can go like, you know, one through three. Like, are you the max, or are you only required to do a 1? But the checklist is kind of meant to give you an idea of all the things that you need to be concerned about. And typically in each category, there's a piece of software or a policy that kind of basically checks the box. So in DNS Filter specifically checks a few of the boxes, like you mentioned, and I'm glad you said that. I just want to make it clear that DNS Filter is part of your security stack, not the only solution. Like we already touched on MFA. You mentioned Huntress. So there's a handful of software packages, and, you know, maybe more depending on the security level for that particular organization that will be required to meet all of the checks in this list. But the goal is to be aware of them, make progress towards completing each of the check boxes, and just it's like a game, like getting to the end, checking all the boxes, making sure that your organization is secure, and because you don't want to be on the news next week, you know, with some data breach or, you know, whatever happens.
Right. It's not just the brakes in your car. It's not just the seatbelt. It's not just the airbag. You want all of them, right? And DNS Filter, similarly, you know, you want that to be a part of your stack.
For me, someone who's not, you know, as technically inclined, I really enjoyed it as well. And as a matter of fact, we're going to link that down at the bottom. So anyone who's checking out the podcast, if you want to see this white paper, it'll be linked here as well. But as we always do, the name of the podcast, Let's Make IT Simple. So we're going to wrap things up. We're going to simplify it. And this is where we put all the pressure on Mikey. We'll make it. And we'll see if he can do it in one take. Actually, no matter what, it's going to look like he did it in one take.
It only took one take.
So 30 seconds or less, Mikey, and you know, you don't have to, you know, grab your stopwatch or anything. We'll work that in. But 30 seconds or less. Decentralized cyber security. What is it? Why do modern businesses need it? And how does DNS Filter help with that?
So decentralized cybersecurity is a very simple concept, and, you know, we could go on for hours about the different parts of it, the different checks that you need to meet. But in the simplest terms, it's protecting all the endpoints where they are as if they're the most important piece of your infrastructure.
Wow.
There you go. There you go.
8
Like
seconds.
3. Oh, nice.